Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hello, Flavia. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
¿Cómo estás?
Hi.
You can put where you're from in the chat so we know where everyone is joining from.
Qué bueno, tenemos un compañero sordo, ¿verdad, Ed? Okay.
I think I'm the only one who is deaf. Who else is deaf here? Who else?
Yes, please let us know who is deaf in the chat. Ed Chevy is doing sign language. Ricardo.
Ricardo. Sí. Ricardo. Ujú.
Bon-chan.
Hey.
Ohayou gozaimasu.
Okay, something that should be clear when Ed speaks, Yaritza will be speaking. So when you hear Yaritza will be at some point actually speaking in his stead. So we should be aware of that. That he should, when he wants to participate, he will let us know and open the mic, and Yaritza will be his interpreter in that moment. For
Okay.
the general audience, everybody knows.
And
So I will-
also Ricardo.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So I will spotlight Yaritza throughout, and she can just let us know when somebody wants to say something.
So Yaritza, whenever it's needed, it should be, questions will be left for the end of the presentation, but if by any chance somebody really needs to ask something, including, if Ed needs to interrupt, let us know and open the mic and just ask the question you need to pose at the moment, okay?
Yeah, yes, this is the interpreter speaking now. At the beginning, I already saw a deaf person and we said hi, and
Ricardo
the
López
man
also.
was the only, he was asking if there was another deaf person here.
Yes,
That is
Ricardo
the reason
López.
why I spoke.
Ricardo López.
No, it is, his
It's not?
name is Ed.
No, Ricardo López.
Oh, I
Is
haven't.
he also deaf is a question.
Mhm. Okay.
Cool. Maybe in the meantime, people can just introduce themselves
Yes.
because it is too quiet.
Ricardo. Ricardo López.
Ricardo, Yaritza.
You can also introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Ricardo Lopez. If I can have please, the interpreter and the presenter so I can see both of them at the same time.
Yes. Explícale que van a estar los dos a la misma vez.
Okay, perfect.
Explícale que estamos esperando a que entre todo el mundo.
Still, can you already pin both of the, like maybe me and or Yaritza? Yeah, me and Yaritza, so he can follow because they're having trouble following.
Sure. I thought we were going to do the introductions first, but I can pin you.
Okay. Oh, then pin you. Whoever is going to speak first, you should pin them already so they can already see how it's going to work.
Wait, no, I don't want to pin. I need to spotlight.
Or spotlight, whatever. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, because that's for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then spot yourself and then the interpreter so they know how it's going to work. So we all know.
I'll add you.
There you go. Then you'll change to yourself. So this will be the way it will be working all through the presentation. There will be the presenter and the sign language interpreter who will be spotted so you can see both. I see Ricardo do the sign that's good. Excellent. Thank you. We're trying our best.
Okay, I can just do the introduction without being spotlighted. I think that's fine. Everyone can choose to see me. Oh, here we go. More people have entered.
So
Maybe while we are waiting, people can introduce themselves. So we can.
People can introduce themselves in the chat so that we can see and people aren't talking over each other.
Okay.
It is 7:05, so I think maybe we should begin and people will continue to enter as we go along. So I just want to welcome everybody to our, I think it's our 4th session for the World Kamishibai Forum on accessibility and Kamishibai performance, or Kamishibai for deaf children. As you can see, we will be having a sign language interpreter throughout, and we're very lucky to have today 2 very accomplished presenters. Tere Marichal Lugo is an award-winning playwright, children's book author, and has also won many awards for her work on television. And Orlando Gonzalez Rivera is a dancer, choreographer, actor, director, and he's also the founder of a nonprofit that supports multidisciplinary, accessible artistic productions. So we are trying to make this session as accessible as possible. And to do that, I need to explain a little bit about the interpretation function. So as soon as I start the language interpretation, you should all see interpretation at the bottom of your screens, and you can choose if you want to hear the program in Spanish or English. So the first portion of the presentation will be by Orlando Gonzalez, and Tere Marichal will do the interpreting for him. So I will start her interpretation, and then you should all see the option of interpretation at the bottom, and you can choose to hear in Spanish or in English.
the first one will be in English and the second one will be in Spanish.
Orlando, could you explain this in Spanish to the
Okay,
people who
sure.
might need that?
Sí, en esta sesión vamos a hacer una sesión accesible primero para la comunidad sorda. Va a haber intérprete de señas, Yaritza Balay, y entonces la primera parte de la presentación la voy a hacer yo, Orlando González, en inglés, pero Tere Marichal va a estar como intérprete al español. Así que si usted es hispanoparlante o prefiere el idioma español, puede ir a la función de interpretación en la parte de abajo de la pantalla y ahí oprime la parte que dice Spanish o español, dependiendo cómo esté su Zoom. Y ahí va a estar escuchando a Tere Marichal única y exclusivamente en español, mientras la presentación se hace en inglés. Así que eso sería para los hispanoparlantes. Después, cuando Tere haga la presentación en español, yo interpretaré al inglés, así que usted quita la función de interpretación para que escuche el idioma principal en la sala principal. Eso sería todo. Okay, I've done it. That's it.
Thank you.
Vamos a pedirle a la gente en el chat que diga si explicó.
I think Tere is already there.
Okay, good.
Okay, you tell me when you want me to start.
I think we're good to start.
Oh, okay, so let's start.
Oh, wait, Tere,
So,
Tere have
yeah.
something to say?
I think she wants to know if there people are hearing. Or
People, la gente que habla español, ¿me está escuchando? ¿Me lo pueden decir en el
So let us know in the chat if you're having any.
Escuchas, Tere, te escuchas.
Okay, it's good, Tere. They can hear you, Tere. Te escuchan, Tere.
Okay, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're ready to start. Like she said before, my name is Orlando Gonzalez. I come from Puerto Rico, and I want to talk. It will be a two-part presentation. I'll speak exclusively about accessibility, and Tere Marichal will speak about Kamishibai and how can it work for the deaf community. So people ask, why accessibility? The real question is, why not? So it is something first. Accessibility is the law in many countries. There is a mandate to offer the same services to all citizens in all areas of government and of course also in the arts. The second reason is accessibility is the right thing to do. Since we call ourselves highly developed societies, we are obliged to protect the rights of the most vulnerable citizens. Accessibility does just that. The third reason I often mention, accessibility is convenient for your relatives and for yourself. At least one of your relatives will be born with a condition or will obtain one during the course of their lives. But it could also be you. So having the accessibility path already paved will ease your relatives or your own reinsertion in life as you knew it previous to any condition you may have developed. And last but not least, if you don't do it for any of the previous three reasons, neither because it's the law, the right thing to do, or because it is convenient for you or your family, do it for the money. There are millions of dollars in municipal, state, and federal government grants for organizations willing to do this job. Government, we all know, is not doing a good job offering equal access to citizens with disabilities. There is also money in the private sector to offer consulting services to deal with customers with different conditions. Remember, they are also consumers. It means that corporations can offer recreational as well as social services to communities with disability the same way they offer them to other clients. Third, you can expand as an organization, you can expand your audience and your services through accessibility grants and services. Different things move different people. As long as there is accessibility, you can choose the path or the different paths that best suit your organization or you as an artist, okay? How do we go about it? That's the next question, because people say, how do we do it? It's too hard, it's too difficult. How do we make it happen? The first advice, from the moment you start a project, any project, a creation or an event like this one, accessibility must be present from day one. Don't leave it for later because you will end up making a mess or not fully offering a good experience to your audience. So it should be from the beginning. I have an activity, how do I make it accessible to everybody or to the most people possible? My experience has shown that planning for accessibility from the beginning actually opens up new and extended venues for creativity. So it's not only a practical thing. As an artist, you start to see things differently. It opens your worldview and shows you new artistic, creative, and production possibilities that you did not think about before. There is a great example in museums. A museum created a 3D version of the paintings for the blind community. The experience for the blind was great since they could better understand the painting, but it was also interesting for people who were not blind since they could experience the painting in a different way. Besides, it created work for other artists who reproduced the painting in 3D. It also became a new item that could actually be sold in a museum store. It means created works, new possibilities, created work, and a source on income for an organization. So it is not only, it benefits everybody. Second, very important, know your audience. Although I generally offer this presentation covering all sorts of conditions or disabilities, I will focus on the deaf community since it is the experience Tere Marichal will be sharing with you tonight. Hopefully, we can meet some other time and go through the entire conference on accessibility for all sorts of conditions. The deaf community is a very diverse community, like any other community we know. It's no different. They have very different backgrounds, going from very isolated individuals, like we have in any community, to very tight or urban communities. Some have almost no education, as opposed to others with bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees. Those who live in an urban community tend to be very independent. They actually, and this is very important, the deaf community do not see themselves as disabled. So although they have been categorized as a disability, they don't necessarily see themselves as disabled. They know they cannot hear, and that's it, but they have their own language and they have their own culture. So it is as simple as that, and it's something we overlook many times when we deal with the deaf community. The deaf community is very tight and does not open easily to strangers, particularly if the strangers don't know sign language. Therefore, when you're considering integrating them as part of your project, it is very important to have someone from the community who can actually introduce you and your project and who can actually vouch for you. They have seen people come and go trying to help or to save them from their problem. So they are really tired and quite fed up of that kind of people who just come to help them or save them. They must be convinced with the right reasons and show that there is something really interesting for them in this whole endeavor. Be clear and honest about what you're offering to the community. That's very important. The deaf community is very upfront, very honest, very direct. So be honest. Do you want to offer them a Kamishibai show? Do you want to offer them a Kamishibai workshop? Who will be assisting you so they can actually enjoy whatever you're offering them? Another point, be clear about the level of accessibility. And that's something that it will show later with some examples. Will it be a performance? Will you be narrating with your voice? And will a sign language interpreter be assisting you right next to you? Will the storyteller be a sign language interpreter who knows how to do Kamishibai, and will he or she use voice and sign language simultaneously? Will a deaf person be the storyteller for a deaf audience? Or will there be a voice assistant for a hybrid audience? These are the considerations you must keep in mind from the beginning of the project if you want to make it really accessible. The other consideration is, will it be a workshop to train sign language interpreters or hard of hearing individuals who can use sign language and voice during the performance? Will it be a workshop to train artists and individuals from the deaf community on how to do storytelling using Kamishibai? Be aware that sign language is a very rich and histrionic language. It's very 3D, it's very out there. And deaf people love a good story and put a lot of passion in their stories, their personal stories or other people's stories. So it is part of their culture and their language. To show how accessibility works in real life, Tere Marichal will be showing you now some videos and will be giving you some explanations about different possibilities that she personally lived and other possibilities that she had already recorded for you, so you can see the actual practice of what accessibility looks like in a nutshell. Okay, so now you'll give us a couple of minutes because now I'll become the interpreter into the English language and Tere Marichal will be now the presenter. So give us a couple of minutes while Tara makes that switch. So I'll let you now with Tere Marichal. We'll be allowing the questions after the presentations.
De Yaritza. ¿Me puedo ver al lado de Yaritza? Porque no me veo. ¿Nos estamos viendo las dos?
Okay, can we see each other now? Have we?
Should I unspotlight Yaritza or should she stay spotlighted? Both? Okay, so Tere and Yaritza.
Okay, gracias. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hola. Muy buenas
Hello.
noches y que
Good evening.
estén
And I'm very happy to be here with you tonight in this very important space. It's the first time we do this. Therefore, you're going to forgive us if there is any little problem we may come around. I will be sharing with you what I learned in 2018 when the Institute of Puerto Rican Culture sponsored a Kamishibai workshop. Our goal was to have 5 teachers, sign language teachers, but only one person showed up and accepted the challenge. And she performed a great job. And she narrated one of our stories. For us, Puerto Ricans, this is a very important folkloric tale, and it is very important to recover and bring back those stories. The story is the mice. She was working at that moment at the San Gabriel College, which is for the deaf. And I will present first this video so you can see the job of a person who's not deaf. She's a teacher of deaf children who uses the sign language and who tells us a folkloric tale integrating Kamishibai. I will be now share my screen so you can then see the video. Are you ready? And the story's name is The Mice. Long time ago, in San Juan, Puerto Rico, there was a cat. His name, Gillo, and this was his sign. Gillo was very intelligent, but he was very hungry. Recently, in Puerto Rico, we had a hurricane. Saint Philip was the name. My grandmother told me that it was a terrible hurricane, and I asked, just like Maria, or the same or the worst? Yes, it was the same. It was really bad. So what happened with Gillo? Gillo wasn't able to plan. He didn't have enough food, so he was very concerned. But why? He had family, 8 kittens, and they were already growing up. And they need more food, different food. He was very sad. He was very concerned. And he thought, what can I do? So he decided to take a walk. He was walking around in the San Juan streets. He heard something. Where is that noise coming from? It comes from the swords. What is it? That was a mice community, and they were very happy. They were sharing, and they loved cheese. The mouse Gla, she was going to prepare a really very good cheese, but there was a problem. They had no salt, nothing at all. So he asked Mouse Sael to go to the neighbor's house and to please to bring some salt, a little salt, to prepare the cheese. I said, okay, I'll go. So the mouse, he left, Sael left. He was walking, singing, and speaking. I saw a little mouse that he could dance very well. I saw a little mouse who could dance very well. And then there was the black cat, and they met face to face. The mouse had already seen that cat. He was very afraid. At that moment, he saw the cat was lying there, and he thought he was dead. So he just ran away to tell his mother. Oh, mother. What happened, Sael? Where is the salt? Mom, I wasn't able to get the salt. I'm sorry. Why? Oh, Mom, I saw a cat. Wait, a cat? Where? I saw the cat, and I think he's dead. What? We have to tell all the mice about. So the entire mouse community knew about it, that there was a cat and that he was dead. So they prepared a wooden bed, and they went to look for the cat. When they found the cat, they put him on the wooden bed, and they left. They went to the cemetery, and they prayed. They were praying. Those who do evil, let's do good to them. Those who do evil, let's do good to them. Those who do evil to us, let's do good to them. And that's so on and so forth. So they kept praying at the cemetery, and they were walking to the cemetery. When they arrived, all the mice decided to put the body in a better position, but one, the little mouse, was very scared and said, please, do it quickly, do it quickly. What happens if the cat wakes up? What are we going to do? Relax, one, take it easy, take it easy. Enjoy the moment. Not everybody, you get to get a cat who's dead. So relax and enjoy it. Today, it's a great day. It's our lucky day. But the cat, Gijo, he was listening. When all of a sudden, the cat woke up. And all the mice started to run. They fled, but glad the little mouse stopped and said she was very surprised. That cat, it has 7 lives. And they all ran away. The cat, Gijo, came back to the sword and found the cheese that belonged to the mice, and he stole it. He stole it to feed his family. So, likewise, this cat, he told the story. He told me the story, and now I'm telling you this his story. So thank you very much. The deaf people, they enjoy to be called deaf. Deafness is not a disability. They are very proud of it. I understand that there is not a lot of support for the community due to lack of information, due to lack of education. Now they're starting to the community to be considered, and people are getting interested for sign language. But there are more than 100,000 deaf who need help, who need support, and we need to prepare ourselves so there is not a barrier so we can communicate with this community. I think that Kamishibai could be a great support to develop their educational skills and academic skills. It helps reading through images, and many deaf have a difficulty in this a problem for reading. It is sometimes not so interesting. It also develops social skills, since the technique is a continued integration between the storyteller and the audience. There are questions, you anticipate the stories. I think the technique can really foster the wish to read and narrate for the deaf. I had the opportunity to present the story to my deaf students, and without forcing him, he wanted to join me and he wanted to narrate the whole story. He showed a lot of interest. He was paying attention. What I like of integrating the sign language is that the deaf can participate as well as the hearing. Doing this will promote the hearing people to learn sign language, and they will be aware about the rights of everybody. Besides, it opens the path to inclusion and it stops segregation. I do recommend the use of Kamishibai in the classroom because it includes many skills like research, creativity, expression. I consider that it should be facilitated to challenge students and make their learning a more participatory one and more interesting. I think there's a difference between the use of computer and the Kamishibai. They are two very useful tools, especially for the deaf community. The computer has a PowerPoint, which can have a digital story, and you can add movement, and you can manipulate it. But on the other hand, you have Kamishibai, which the storyteller manipulates the story of images using their hands and make the activity a more interesting one. And you integrate more elements like songs, games. So in conclusion, both can be used in the classroom, but Kamishibai still a more humane technique, and it establishes communication between the two parties, the storyteller and the audience. It can also change the narration according to the different characteristics of the groups. It adapts to the participants since it is an exchange. I would like to continue using the storytelling and the Kamishibai for all the deaf here in Puerto Rico. And I would like for them to also come and learn how to do Kamishibai so they can narrate their stories with this technique.
Okay.
that job, we weren't able to continue afterwards for many factors, for many natural disasters in Puerto Rico. But again, this year, after Hurricane Maria, the earthquakes, and the pandemics, we're going back to the program. We're taking back that workshop. We've tried to, for the Institute of Puerto Rican Culture to support us, but we have to do things one thing at a time. We're going to keep talking. We'll leave the questions for the end. The other job, that something we did while we were working that project in particular that year, when we observe the video, we can see that the narrator is not deaf and she can also communicate verbally. It's one of the ways of using Kamishibai when the person can use sign language but is not deaf. She knows the language very well and created a series of signs. For example, San Juan, Puerto Rico, Kamishibai, in order to be able to work for that specific story. She knows how to keep a harmonious relationship between the technique, Kamishibai technique, the sign language, and the oral narration. The narrator was taking the workshop and gave us the opportunity to explore and include sign language, taking into account the images, which is very important for the future narrator. Despite the fact that theater, it's not what she specializes. You'll see in the next video, we're trying to get the interpreters to the level they understand theater. So we are teaching how to speak better, how to project better, and also the narration. It is very colloquial and very dynamic. It was recorded in the backyard of a house to reinforce the idea that Kamishibai can be presented anywhere we can tell a story. The story that we chose belongs to the Puerto Rican folklore. This experience led me to reflect upon the situation of story narration, storytelling, and sign language in Puerto Rico. Then I registered into the sign language course and the master's degree in special education to be more efficient as storyteller and presenter. I'm interested in learning this language to integrate it in the storytelling where it can be the most useful. The story, when it's told, it's accessible to everybody when our surroundings offers to the diversity of groups. The real is to be able to enjoy the space, safe space that is our needs. We all are born to create
de innumerables situaciones personales que contamos, pero nos tenemos que
many situations, many personal situations that we narrate, but we have to help each other and support each other to eliminate barriers and impede that we can enjoy the stories of different people, the story in our mind, and are adorned with our imagination. They practice the future, ready to face the present.
Por igual. En casi todos los
We
libros
must all have this opportunity and be
y son muchos, siempre hacen énfasis al hecho de escuchar. Yo misma no me había percatado que siempre dejamos fuera el lenguaje de señas porque nuestra educación no está enfocada a que integremos la diversidad como parte de nuestras vidas. Ignoramos el lenguaje de señas porque vivimos en una sociedad oral. El oralismo ha sido una imposición de la cultura oral que pretende que todo el mundo hable como ellos. Esa es una de las primeras barreras que hay que eliminar. La inclusión nos ayuda a desarrollar un sentido de identidad, elemento indispensable a la hora de crear cuentos. La elección de los temas para la creación de las historias debe partir de nuestra visión cultural y nuestro respeto hacia la diversidad, igualdad e inclusión. Tomando esto en cuenta, hay que evitar el uso de los estereotipos en las ilustraciones. Vamos ahora a ver un video donde ustedes podrán verme diciendo una breve introducción al cuento de la cucarachita Martina y donde Yajaira va a interpretar lo que yo digo. Yajaira no se ha entrenado en la técnica Kamishibai. Este proceso comenzará este mes. Por lo tanto, ella solamente va a tener relación con la técnica para fines demostrativos. En este video se integraron textos escritos en inglés para que el público pueda entender de qué se trata. El texto no representa una traducción exacta de las palabras. Es solo una guía.
An exact interpretation, it is a guide and an example that in Kamishibai we can integrate sign language, oral language, and written language. So now we're going to present a piece of the story called Martina the Little Cockroach.
Cuento.
Hello, the story. There is a story coming. The story coming, it's brewing. Greetings and welcome to the World Kamishibai Forum from Puerto Rico. We send a hug to all countries that are today with us in this very important forum. I am Tere Marichal Lugo, and she is my fellow friend, Yaritza Balaya, and she's my interpreter. Today we'll be speaking about sign language and Kamishibai. Today also, we have a very special celebration. Today, it's 90 years of the first publishing of the little cockroach Martina and the little mouse Paris, which was told by Pura Belpré. So for us, it's a great, we're very happy to share this story with you all. We're going to start and we're going to tell a little part of piece of this story. Afterwards, Yaritza will narrate the story using only sign language. So let's start. The little cockroach Martina, they say that long time ago in Puerto Rico, there was a little cockroach called Martina. She's very happy. She liked to work. In the morning, very early in the morning, the little cockroach Martina would come out to say hi to all the plants. My love, today I'm going to the marketplace. I'm going to tell new stories. Listen to me. I sell very good mint for those, so your mouth is really fresh. I sell very nice mint, so your mouth is really fresh. One day, while Martina was home, she started to do the chores in the house. And she was sweeping from here to there, sweeping here and there, and then all of a sudden, she swept a mango, and underneath the mango, there was a quarter. A quarter. I found a quarter. I'm rich. A quarter. I'm rich. I have a quarter now. I'll go to the store and I'll buy some sandals. I'm rich. She would scream. Martina and the mouse Paris, it's one of our most beloved stories. And now you will be able to see the story done in sign language by Yaritza Balay.
Acabamos ya con esto. Sí. Ok. Acaba de llegar mi querida Karoshi, que está aquí al ladito mío.
This is my grandniece, a grandchild. She's here with me now.
Cuando trabajamos con el
When we
Kamishibai,
work with the Kamishibai
e integramos lenguaje de
and we
señas,
integrate sign language, the deaf community can empower themselves and create inclusion spaces when the stories are told. Remember that Butai occupies a very interesting space wherever we put it. Even if you don't speak sign language, you can feel attracted by the enchantment and the fascination that the technique shows. Well, it has already been shown the narration of stories help deaf people to share these experiences, help them to start the discussion of the topic and create changes in their community because it opens a space for communication. We have to take into account that this technique demands the learning and development of different skills and that are general for the hearing and and to create a story. We like to tell the deaf people, read stories about these experiences, about deaf people that are a good example, that it would be worth writing them. Many researchers agree that stories must be written by deaf. In that way, they create and give shape to the way of storytelling and know what signs they will be using to create a storyboard from a different perspective and design of the drawings, also to how to perform the drawings, to manipulate the drawings, use the right language, that it's also inclusive, tone, pause, to have a willingness to share with the audience. Depending on the story, we must prepare drawings where we can see details about the elements that the drawing has and contains. In that way, we can encourage people to know a sign language, explaining particularly the name of that object, and also we can help the deaf community, especially children, to acquire more vocabulary. So we have to be aware that we have to speak and make the sign language facing the audience. When we turn to change the drawing, we cannot read lips or signs. If we're in a closed place, we should have the appropriate lighting so people can see our faces and the movement and the gestures and the sign language, and speak naturally and with good movement. The storyteller must express clearly the personality of the characters. Some authors explain that they prefer stories with very few characters, but I understand that it all depends on the degree of knowledge that anybody may have of the story, about the storytelling and integration of the sign language. There is no doubt that Kamishibai is a technique, a multimodal technique, and we can use different languages. Also, it could be integrated in schools as a way to assess the learning of the children and the language acquisition, and also the creativity and the creation of stories, development of skills, working with specific topics such as environmental education or what it means to be deaf in a hearing community. In this case, the relationship between Butai with the deaf community is very important. It is all a matter of practicing and be aware, and also the pauses that are needed to change the drawings and to position yourself once again facing the audience. The narrator will decide at what the height where the butai will be placed, and you achieve this by practicing until you establish a close relationship with technique and the storyteller. When we tell stories using this technique, we are opening space for inclusion. Inclusion is a right. It's giving access to everybody and opportunities to everybody, removing all prejudice, discrimination, hate, and intolerance that distance us and separate us from the rest of the people. Because of its physical form, it can be taken anywhere for refugee camps, schools, hospitals, and we can present it in the network, in the internet, where it's also welcome. It's been a surprise how we can open the doors and how the presence generates inclusion and fosters diversity. Since the theater, the small theater, where there could be stories of any culture and any human situation, Kamishibai can represent an open door for the deaf community to share their stories, organize storytelling festivals, poetry, and be present in the internet, and sharing their interpretation and sharing them with the world. For me, it also represents a way to develop Afro-Puerto Rican language, to which we give importance to our African heritage and culture. Likewise, like we have children who sing folkloric songs. We could also have storytellers, children who are storytellers of folkloric stories have never been told. And they can also tell, for the deaf community, they can tell their own stories, the stories of our deaf community who want to share them. They're willing and desire to share with us. Each country has a different sign language system. So for the storytelling, you must have access to closed caption, even if it is in an elementary manner, like we did in the video. So the audience understand what the story about. To finish, I will tell you that next year we'll have the participation of more deaf people who will be using Kamishibai to narrate their stories and to really achieve inclusion and have real diversity and to have a more dynamic in the World Forum. Peace to you all in this 2022 and long live the Kamishibai. Thank you very much. Now, Tara will take the microphone.
Yes, thank you so much, Tere and Yaritza. I noticed that there are questions in the chat. So I think, Orlando, should I now take the interpretation off and you'll just interpret as needed?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go ahead and change that then. Hold on just a moment. Okay, so now I've ended the interpretation mode. I will leave you spotlighted because two of the questions in the chat. So Ed Tevi said he has a question, and I believe he may want to sign it.
Yaritza.
This is the interpreter speaking. Give me a moment so that I can find him.
I could spotlight him. There he is.
The workshop was really good. Hello. It was really good, really great. Wow. And it's really important for the deaf community. So we can learn how to draw and have accessibility, and we can communicate with each other, and it is really important and worth it. I grew up with a deaf family. All of us are deaf. My mom, my dad, and our way of communication was sign language. Everything was sign. So in World War II, my mom, she was a dancer back then. And it is natural, it was natural for her to have that experience. And also it is really important for them. All the people in the band, they couldn't believe that she was deaf. And she used to tell them, no, I am deaf, I cannot hear, but I can feel the beat. And it was really hard for them, for the band, and for the people she used to work with to understand. In Hawaii, they had a camp for deaf children. And the deaf children were used to see everything, and they wanted to learn everything that was being said. But it was really hard for them to have an open mind about that, and it was really hard for them because the deaf group was apart from them. They used to have, it was a deaf institute, they used to have different activities for the deaf, and it was really open for them. But I think that what it's most important is to have that door open, that we should keep on knocking on that door again, and we shouldn't stop, and because we want for people to open that door for us, and it's really important to explain to them, because many of them doesn't know how to work with deaf people, so it's really important to have that opportunity. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. And we also have Ricardo Lopez said that he had questions as well. So I will take Ed off the spot and I will spotlight Ricardo. And maybe he can ask his question.
Okay, hello. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here for the opportunity. It is a pleasure to see you all. And I was amazed. I used to work, I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher, and I work in a deaf school. And I'm also a person who does theater. And I have used Kamishibai, and it's a really good one. And I started to think about all the ideas that we can incorporate. Use all the body language, facial expressions, and it's better for us to understand them. While I was growing in Puerto Rico, I was my mom was a teacher, but I grew up with in the hearing world. My family was hearing, so my mom used to. She taught me how to write and how to read. So I was in a deaf school, and I have noticed at Colegio San Gabriel in Puerto Rico, they had a different experience from the one that I had. And everyone was asking me, who told you how to read?
Wow.
Eri Lague. Laguerre. Eri Laguerre.
Enrique.
Sorry. So many people don't know who is René Marquez, and I established and I used to do many things and explain to them who he was. And I explained and I made up stories about who he was. And that gave accessibility for the language. And it was bilingual because it was provided in English and in sign language at the same time. And I thought that maybe in Puerto Rico and another country would like to, for us, deaf person who are bilingual to show and mix theater and sign language as just one. So it's really, so I have seen already before with deaf people who use both sign language and then English. But we communicate with our eyes, so it is really important for us to see the sign language, and that is how accessibility is provided, and it's better for us so we can understand better the concept and everything that it is being written. So that is the way to do it.
Qué bueno. Wow.
Thank you very much. So we have more time for people's questions, and you can either put them in the chat, or if you look down at the bottom, you can raise your hand and ask in any language. I think Orlando knows 5 languages, so we're well covered. So please ask any questions you have. And if you don't, I think Donna maybe has a few other subjects to bring up about inclusivity.
Yes.
Yes, some questions that were introduced to me, and which I'm very interested in too. Well, first of all, has anyone here used, other than Tere and Orlando, or Tere, I guess, used Kamishibai with deaf people or other disabled communities? Have any of you have any initiative to include a wide variety of people in your audience? I know there's many storytellers here, people who work with Kamishibai. Has anyone had this kind of experience? Do you see any hands? I don't see.
No.
I designed a new butai that I am working to integrate. It's a different butai. Maybe I can show you so you can understand it. I have it in here. It's a very big butai, and I designed it thinking on textures and on integrating more vocabulary, and you see it has 4 different doors in the butai, so I can put in each door different drawings of the story, so I can talk with different to explain the name of different things. But I also thought that I'm going to use this for blind people, because my next project is going to be for the blind, to tell stories with Kamishibai. Because if you write with Braille in the drawings, the story is telling, and the blind people use textures to make the drawings, collage. I have the feeling that blind people is going to use also Kamishibai. But we have to have a special people who write the Braille in a corner of the drawing, and the textures of the drawing. He can touch the texture and tell a story using Kamishibai, because I think for me, inclusive thing is a very important theme, because I was a girl with it was very difficult for me to learn to write and to read. Very difficult. When I was little, I was considered a special girl. So people thought I couldn't learn, and they treat me as someone who doesn't understand anything. So working with special education, and later, when I was 13 years, I understood my mind learn in a different way from other people. So for me, it's very important to work with special education, because we have so many people that it is excluded from the culture movement. And it is not only to do an art project, is to be part of society and tell their stories and use their way of communication to tell a story. We must be inclusive. Humanity has to change. So I think I'm going to work soon with blind people, because I am sure they will use Kamishibai, because for me, Kamishibai is an inclusive object in all the ways.
Thank
I
you.
wanna-
Inclusive.
Tere,
Yeah,
if
Tere?
I may, if,
Ya volviste.
Go ahead, Orlando. We do have some
Yes.
in the
I
chat.
wanted to mention that, I mean, there is a very important thing is we need to, the shortest way to reach real inclusion is to really integrate from the beginning the population we'll be working with. For example, now that Tere mentions, for example, for the deaf community, it will take too long if the artist himself or herself try to learn sign language to then start doing the projects. The shortest and fastest and the best way to really integrate the community is what Ted already did: train an interpreter first, which is the easier also for the hearing, to communicate, and then use the interpreters to then train deaf artists and the deaf community in general, so they get a like of it, they really get into it, and they make it their own and start doing innovations that they may need to do the storytelling, what works better for them. For example, the same with the blind. You have to do like Tere is going to do now, a first project to at least present it to a blind person, include them, somebody, but then use that same connection you already trained to really enter the community and make it available to all of them so they can really make it their own, because otherwise it will take too long. So think about how can you make it for you as an artist, but maybe the best social action and educational action we can make is to create workshops to train people from the population, the community, and it works for every community, the deaf community, the blind community, community with low socioeconomic income. You have to bring it to them and they have to make it their own for it to work and to expand the Kamishibai culture, the technique, but more like Tere said, to make it a social project that will really change and benefit many, many lives.
Yes, thank you,
Keep that in
Orlando.
mind to integrate it.
That's so important. I think that having people make Kamishibai their own on all levels is what is going to keep it going as a movement, as an interest.
Right.
We do have a few comments in the chat. So Stella Pahor, I think from Slovenia, says that she has been telling stories to adults with Down syndrome, and some mental disabilities and to blind people too, and to people with psychiatric troubles. So Stella, do you want to say something about that? If she's still here, I could pin her as well. Let me see if I can find her. If I can.
I work also with niños autistas en la comunidad Las Marías.
Autistic child,
Hmm.
autistic children,
4 niños autistas que estuvieron
autistic children.
trabajando durante más de 6 meses en una comunidad que está en el sur de Puerto Rico. Mucha gente me decía que ellos no iban a poder hacer nada. Y yo decía, bueno, pero es que si pensamos eso desde el principio, nadie va a hacer nada en el mundo. Entonces, esos 4 niños yo los filmé trabajando. Sigue tú para que me traduzca. I filmed.
Sí, por eso sí, no me estás dejando.
Ah.
Yeah, she worked with 6 autistic children in a remote town called Las Marias, and it was very interesting. But what at the beginning people told her that it wasn't going to amount to anything, that it wasn't going to work. And she said, well, if that's the way we think, then we can never start any project at all. Sí.
Entonces, ellos 4 hicieron 2 cuentos, trabajaron juntos las láminas y contaron el cuento. Para mí lo contaron maravilloso. Yo lo debía haber traído porque yo lo filmé.
And they were able to draw their own, they made their own drawings, and they were able to even narrate the story. And the way they did it, she found it was just great, the way they did it. And I mean, she considered even bringing it here, but so they did work. It did work for them.
Yeah. I worked with some children on the autism spectrum as well, and I found that they really love to draw, and their drawings gave them a tool to then communicate, because the teachers all said they would never be able to tell their stories. But when they had the pictures that they had created and they were so proud of them, it became a way for them to communicate with their classmates. And it was a very powerful experience, I think, and was very important for their development and communication with their classmates. We have another comment from Elizabeth Overmeyer, who works in museums. She says, I have had a few experiences working with an ALS interpreter while I told stories, most recently at the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. I was able to spend a half hour before the program began with the interpreter, who had been practicing with my story a few days ahead of time. This is a great experience because she came with questions and I was able to explain and adapt the story to respond to her questions. I don't know, Elizabeth, want to say something? If you unmute, let's see if I can find her.
I'm
In
here.
the meantime, okay, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Oh, okay. First, I should correct that. I said it's ASL, not ALS. I'm typos. But I've worked with several interpreters, but this most recent experience was the first time I had the chance to prepare ahead of time. And it was just so exciting because I could see that she had, she'd polished up her own storytelling skills, and we were working not so much in parallel as together. She'd really thought of gestures she would use. And she had questions for me. For instance, I talked about a character, a deer who was eating and walking at the same time. And she said, how can how does that work? And we sort of changed what I said, and it was just much more lively with a real partnership.
I appreciate because that's the factor, the fact to be able to share and collaborate with the person who's going to be assisting you, because then they do a better job, and you also become a lot more aware of the audience, of the deaf audience that will be present. So the result will be a great experience for everybody, the interpreter, the storyteller, and the audience. And at the end, I think we are all artists, and that's what we want, that everybody enjoys the experience. So I'm glad to hear that. I mean, planning is key, for any project, any artistic project, any production. The planning beforehand and having enough time to do it, it's the key factor to be successful. So that was a great experience, and thank you for mentioning.
And to give credit to the organizers at the Asian Art Museum, it was always their practice to collect our scripts and send them to the interpreters ahead of time. And where this was just a little more exciting was that we had preparation then. We had a little rehearsal time built in before the actual performance started. And that really made a difference.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Maybe Tere and Yaritza could talk about their collaboration, because it seems like they've learned a lot from each other in working together.
Yo creo que algo muy importante que tenemos que hacer es documentar todo el trabajo que hagamos.
Something very important we must do is document everything we do.
Tenemos que escribir ensayos de nuestras experiencias con este tipo de proyecto.
Experiences.
Porque si no escribimos, se queda simplemente en proyecto, y cuando nosotros nos vayamos, los que están detrás tienen que volver a empezar.
Because if we don't do it, it will just remain as a project, and those who come after will have to start all over. I get frozen.
Yeah, I think we
get frozen.
La experiencia que tuvimos Yaritza Balay y yo fue muy interesante. Orlando.
The experience we had
perdóname.
was
Yeah, Orlando, I think we're having trouble hearing you. You're freezing up.
Yeah, do it in English because mine is freezing on my side.
Okay. The experience we have
English
and I was very interesting, because Orlando, I talked to Orlando, and Orlando talked with Yaritza, and he asked her, "Do you want to learn Kamishibai?" And she told us, "Yes, I want to learn Kamishibai." Okay, you are going to learn. Tere is going to teach you Kamishibai, and you are going to make the sign language. And when we began to work, we had very little time. We filmed this video yesterday. Yesterday, we filmed the video because I thought we have to film the video, because if we do this in the forum, we are going to lose many time, and maybe things doesn't fit well. So we decided yesterday that we were going to film a little video so people can understand the different ways we can use the sign language to present Kamishibai. And we have been talking about the importance of train more people, so people can work with the Kamishibai and work with children and work with sign language. But the integration between the storyteller and the interpreter is very important because they must have the same feeling about the story. They have to understand very well the events, the order of the events, and why the story is being told like that. But the interpreter can teach the storyteller some things about the drawing. For example, yesterday I understood that when I was working first with Grisel, that we talked a lot about how we were going to move the drawings we need so people can hear and understand the sign language. That is a very important point. What and how we are going to draw the stories so we can make space for the sign language interpretation, because we are working with 3 languages. Sign language is different in every country. Drawings is another language, and the spoken word is another language, and Kamishibai is another language. So we have to work and be very perceptive about what we are doing with our work and how we are going to share it with other people who want to work with deaf people. On October, I'm going to work with deaf people. They want to learn Kamishibai, a community in Yauco, in the south of the island. They want to learn Kamishibai. So it is going to be the first time that I'm going to be with a group of deaf people, and I want them to make stories about their lives, because deaf people need heroes, stories about their lives, so other people can understand and be aware of what is happening. To create empathy, you must understand how the story is. So I think deaf people must make their stories. I think it's the only way to really understand the deaf culture, because it's a culture. So I think this is the first time now I'm doing this like this, no? But I think many people is going to share they have learned, and I think maybe we are given more opportunity talking about this to other people that maybe hasn't think about this issue that is very important.
Much. I think we've all learned about how important this issue is. And we've heard from Ed and Ricardo about how moved they have been by this presentation. And I know, Tere, that you just started a graduate course, so you're going to be developing these ideas more in the years ahead. So I definitely hope that you will come back and share them with us again as you develop your work.
I hope that the community in the South, I'm going to stay there many days. I hope to be there many times. I hope they understand how important it is to document all the process. So other people in the world can see and can understand that this is a process, and a process is a work that takes time. So I think all my life I have been sharing and documenting the works I have made. I cannot show the 4 autistic children because I don't have a letter from their parents. And I show them, but I never tell, oh, they are autistic. Because people, oh my God, no, I prefer not. But this time I'm going to work with them. And another thing I was thinking is that Kamishibai, if we work with Kamishibai in the schools and use it as an assessment for all kinds of children, because one of the problems we have now is children do not want to read and do not want to write. But when you work with them, Kamishibai, you can teach other teachers that if we can integrate Kamishibai as another assessment in the curriculum, we are going to change the way we see the story, because we think that storytellers are part of an art movement. No, Kamishibai is a part and a process of the development of humanity and the integration of different cultures. So if we use it as an assessment in the classroom, we are going to create a generation of writers, illustrators, storytellers, speakers, and we can show them that integrating Kamishibai, we can develop another way of view the society as a whole, integrating all our cultures in one classroom through the storytelling, through Kamishibai. I am making an essay right now about the use of Kamishibai as an assessment. Vente, mama. So when I finish it, I will show you the essay to you. But I think is another way of developing the technique of Kamishibai.
Yes, thank you, Tere. I do think that when you see the illustrations that students come up with, it gives you an insight into what's going on in their minds and in their lives in a very different way from writing and reading. So I think you're on to
when I have workshops in classrooms, they see Kamishibai as, oh, an art. No, I am talking about an assessment that all the departments of education put the Kamishibai in the paper that says, oh, an assessment is this and this and this and this, and also this one. Not only a technique, but a herramienta, ¿cómo se dice herramienta? Una herramienta para
Tool.
A tool for education, not only for storytelling, for education, for the development of language and writing and science and everything.
Well, thank you so much, Tere, Yaritza, Orlando. We are running out of time now, and I know some people need to leave, but I think you left us on a very important note because you brought up one of the reasons we're doing the World Kamishibai Forum is to explore all these different ways that Kamishibai is being used, not just as an art form or as you say, a project in the schools, but for all of these different aspects of people's lives. So thank you. You really crystallized that beautifully. So I just want to end by letting everybody know we will be having our next World Kamishibai Forum in September is, I believe, on the 27th. We will have Philippe Robert on the 24th of September, Philippe Robert from France. So we hope you can join us for that. And please do send us your questions. If you have further questions about this workshop for Tere, we will pass them on to her and to Orlando and Yaritza as well. So again, thank you so much for coming, and we hope to see you next month. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.